Welcome back. This is going to be another part on the FJ40 restoration. So I am almost done with the front axle. I mean, I have done just about everything you could think of rebuilding that axle, with the exception of getting the tie rods put on. I need to change the pinion seal, so I have to take off the front yoke, but I've been waiting to get the tie rods put back on and the brakes assembled so I can put the tires on the ground and then break the axle nut by hand with a wrench. I don't want to impact it. I'm going to try to do that one by hand. That way there's nothing inside changing the backlash and any of those smaller, finer details on the pinion. Anyways, let's get these calipers rebuilt so we can finish up the axle and hopefully get the pinion seal changed by the end of the video. And before we dive into the brake caliper rebuild, let me show you a couple of things I did off camera. Most notably, you'll see the front frame. I painted that with Steelit, so I took the front bumper off. There was a little bit of rust right here on this black part, and just all over there was a little bit of rust inside, so I wire wheeled everything I could. I put a leaf blower in the holes, blew all the crud out, and then hit it with some rust reformer, let that cure, and then I hit it with 2 coats of black Steelit on all of the frame. So it's beautiful. It is my absolute favorite paint to use on anything black. I hit just the bottom of that radiator support as well. Looking closer at the grill, we're going to have to do this. You can see where the paint is actually just coming off completely, so I'll need to refinish that. And you can see right here, I got the tie rods just thrown in. I painted the actual tie rods themselves because they came raw, so I masked everything up, painted that with Steelit, set them as close as I could to where they were at. That way the alignment's not way off, but we'll have to fine tune that for sure. And then lastly, you can't really see, but in here it was completely rusted. The chrome bumper is aftermarket. The bumper is stock, but the chroming was done after the fact. They're supposed to be like a pewter silver. So whoever chromed this bumper, they did a pretty small nickel plate. It's not as good as it can be. So anyways, the nickel plating back here was just like blowing off, and this was all rusted. So I took it off, wire wheeled everything, hit it with rust reformer, and put it back on. So that's what I was doing the last couple of days. It took a lot of time. I hit the bumper with a little bit of Blue Magic polish, took the license plate frame off because that was full of rust, and I'll get that put back on later. But that's pretty much it. I pumped this thing full of grease. There's no slack in it from what I can tell right now. It's still a very low mileage vehicle, so hopefully that's all good. And I cleaned up everything here, pumped that Zerk full of grease, and just cleaned up as much as I could. So it looks really nice. I still need to get to the rest of the frame so you can see the difference from everything I've done all the way back. So this will be getting treated all the way back. Once I start getting into this bottom area, I'm gonna have to mask it off. That way we're not getting a bunch of overspray everywhere. But regardless of that, let's get these calipers rebuilt and hopefully get this thing off the jack stands by the end of the video. So this is the chaos that I call a workbench. I built it to work on the quad motor, and ever since then I've just been accumulating parts for other projects, and it's getting out of control. But I'm clearing out some room today so we can get these things rebuilt. I've got the other one over there, but we'll get to it after this. And if you need to see what these things look like, this is the rust reformer that I've been using. This is the Steelit that I use as well, and I'll put the links in the description below if you need that. These are the cylinder kits, basically a bunch of O-rings and little wire snaps to hold the boot on. I'll put that in the link as well. And I got this air chuck off Amazon so we can put it into where the brake line would normally go and try to get these out. The trick is we need to get these out evenly. So if I don't put anything right now and I blow air in here, so either 1 or 2 of them are going to pop out, but you kind of need them in there to get these other two out, or vice versa. So we'll start with maybe like a little spacer in between both, or maybe some pliers. It's just going to depend on which ones are stuck, which ones want to play, and which ones don't. So we'll time lapse this and see how it goes. These are the two calipers, and man, they are dirty, dirty, dirty. I've seen better days for sure. This one I already dismantled a little bit. We still have the pads in here. I mean, they still had great life. It's probably had one pad change at one point because the rotors were pretty much at the last leg of their life. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to strip this one so it looks like this, and we'll wire wheel it clean so we have a nice clean caliper to work with. And from there, we'll start getting these cylinders out. Let's get you up close and personal with this thing nice and clean. Obviously, it's not 100% perfect, but that's as good as it's gonna get. Those steel wheels will cover everything, so I don't need to detail this like crazy. But just check this out. That was how it was before and after. I'm pretty sure that whole Land Cruiser had an undercoating at some point because there's black everywhere. And I took black off a lot of bolts that were on the knuckle rebuild. So I'm kind of trying to battle that here, but that's just one thing I'm not gonna get perfect because it's in there. So I can spend more time doing it, but I'm not. I wanna get this thing on all fours today. Anyways, we'll let the batteries charge up on that. This one will wait, and we'll start trying to rebuild this. All right, so look at that. You see that O-ring? That's what these are. So we'll have new O-rings. We're gonna get in there with a little bit of sandpaper, very fine grit sandpaper, clean all that out, make it nice and smooth, make the piston smooth. We'll change the O-ring, grease up the piston a little bit, slide it in, and then that's where these new boots come into play. Put the boot on, and then you put your little wire wraparound ring to strap it down, and that's it. I bought two of these kits because the Toyota website, at least for my local dealer, says one per caliper, which I thought was a little crazy, but this has two, so now I gotta see if I can return one. Or I'll just have to sell this, but either way, this looks like there's enough for both of these calipers using that one part number. So here is the before and after. I still need to spray some brake clean in there and get inside the groove, but you can see where the piston is going to ride on the bore. We're nice and clean. And with the new O-ring, cleaning up the piston, we should be back in business. All right, so we have 4 clean pistons. This was the worst one. I filed down the little high ridges that the pliers put on, and the piston was in great shape. So it was just a bunch of crud that built up. It wasn't even rust, really. Just a bunch of crud that built up over time. The bores were a little beat up, but I used some 200 grit sandpaper and just buffed it a little bit, and then I scotch-brighted it to kind of close that and make it a little finer. Now we're going to throw in those O-rings and use a little brake fluid to slide the piston on. And we'll put the boots, the little rings on it, and hopefully jump onto the second caliper. Hey, I think we made big progress here. So the right is all complete. It even came with the brand new cover for the bleeder. So look at that, nice and brittle and ancient. This one still needs to get cleaned up, but just look at the condition that I got them in. Surprisingly enough, these little piston boots weren't too bad, but the O-rings were flat, and I'm just really stoked on how everything came out. I'm not going to bore you with a rebuild on this one. So from here, we're going to jump into getting this mounted on the Land Cruiser and throwing some pads in. The Land Cruiser already has the rotors on, so it should be quick and easy. Okay, so we have the caliper rebuilt. Got the correct side on this side because the bleeder is up on top. All I have to do is thread it onto this guy, lock it down, throw on these bolts, and then we can throw the brake pads on. So let's get to it. This thing's hard to twist. Here's a closer look from the rear side. So turning, it's gonna be perfectly fine, but this way it just stretches just a little bit on that boot. I don't think it'll be an issue. I obviously not a huge fan by the sound of my voice. I wish it was a ½ inch longer, but this will have to do if they say this is normal. For whatever reason, the passenger side has way better clearance. It's not tight at all. And then right here, it gets a little weird, but it's not stretching like the other side does at full lock. So we'll have to see what's going on. Anyways, it's getting dark. I'm not gonna get this on the ground today. I'll finish up this caliper and we'll wrap it up tomorrow. And I'm sorry guys, but that was a lie, a little white lie. It's been weeks since that last little clip, and it's because I've been doing other stuff around the house and just haven't had time to get back to it since that night. So we're going to throw the brake pads in right now, wrap the front end up, get it on the ground, change the pinion seal, and throw the drive shaft in. Little things like this are just small victories for me. I haven't had brakes on it for months at this point, and this just looks fantastic. I did order a second spring. This is a little trick that the Tacoma guys do. So we do 2 springs on top and bottom just so everything spaces out when it's released. I figured for $3 or $4, let's try it on the Land Cruiser, see what happens. So far, everything seems to have proper clearance. Doesn't look like it's getting in the way of anything. So I'm gonna jump on over to the passenger side and we'll get this thing off the jack stands. Tight fit under here, but I needed the wheels on the ground so that I can get this pinion locked and loosen up the nut without an impact. I want to do it with hand tools so that way I don't mess up any of the shims back here. All right, I had to get out and abort that because there's just not enough room to be using the crawler. It's just too low. But I loosened up the nut. It's a 30 millimeter. Loosen up the nut. There's a washer, and then this yoke goes on there. It didn't want to come off, so I used a little puller, zapped it right off, and you can see the old seal. Luckily it's not leaking. The old seal isn't leaking, but we got a brand new one anyways, which is going to be this guy. And then we'll that looks crazy. We'll throw this in and throw the drive shaft on and call it a wrap. And just like that, it's on. I used the axle nut socket, which fits safely around here. Tapped it all the way in, and now we're ready to throw this back on. I scotch brighted the surface so that the seal has a new clean surface to ride on. We'll torque that nut, and I think that's what we're gonna call it a wrap on this video. We got a lot of work done. If you haven't noticed already, we still need to bleed the front brakes, bleed the rear brakes, which need to be rebuilt, so that's why I haven't done it yet. I've got to set the pedal height, the clutch slave throw, and then we could bleed that as well. But we'll save that for the next video, so stay tuned. And if you like what you've seen on this one, follow the rest of the build here.